I know what I've done. I've helped 1,000 kids go to college, and happiness is found only one way, and that's by making someone else happy. See, Matt, sometimes your ship don't come in. Who says you can't swim out where the ship is?
G'day, y'all. This is episode 7 of The Matt Sweeny Show. I talk with Don Green about Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Let's go. Hi, Don. I'm excited to speak with you, first of all, because you got a really interesting story, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell it. Second, because to prepare for this, I just reread Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And I forgot how great a book it is. And I think there are lessons that are going to help a lot of people. And third, I'm creating a program to teach students practical entrepreneurship and about freedom. And I think there are a lot of lessons from your life and from Napoleon Hill that I can take away from this and build into my program. So thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
We'll get into your background. And by the way, the approach I'm going to take with this is speaking the truth in love. I really want to focus on the truth. But to start, Jack Kennedy told me that there's a goal of sending the first copy of Think and Grow Rich to the surface of the moon this year. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. The material, while it was written and published in 37, it's never outdated. The principles of success are the same thing, and they haven't changed. Same people are using them today, and I think no doubt it applies to people, entrepreneurs, self-employed people, probably more than people that's just working for a paycheck, because I think I've always developed the attitude, no matter what I was doing, I was working for myself, and I'm the person responsible for getting my promotions and so forth, rather than waiting for someone to hand me something other. And of course, he spent all his lifetime studying all these people for years and years and years, and he refined it as he went along. For example, in Think and Grow Rich, he had the chapter on cosmic habit force, and he compared ourselves to nature. And we basically get what we plant. If you want corn, you don't sow acres, you plant corn. And same way within life, if you want a return, you have to plant something first. We have a society that's grown up to put your hand out. It's not give me something other than I'll give back. It's you do something for you have to plant the seed to deserve a return, and we will get back much more than what we plant. He'll give a wonderful story of the Kansas farmer taking a little bit of wheat seed and sowing it and not eating the crop, but replanting until he had an unbelievable amount of wheat grown from the seed. And the same way with an apple. Taking an apple and taking the seeds out of it. What do some people see it as? An apple, something to eat, and some people see it as seeds that they can plant and grow plenty of apples. And it's his interpretation, but he learned from it to be able to sit down with I'm working on a book now on family letters. I've got letters, handwritten letters from Edwin Barnes, Edison's only partner. And they maintained a relationship up to their death. He retired to Florida, and of course he'll live there part of the time too. And it's just amazing the stories that he accumulated from people that read. I mean, last night before last, I was reading a couple letters from William Howard Taft, who was president, and at the time he was Supreme Court justice, the only person in this country that served as president and Supreme Court. And Hill had sent him a copy of Law of Success, and the letter is dated right before his dated 1927. The book was released in 28, but he was talking about what the material was in the book Law of Success. He wrote him two different times. Hill was excellent marketing. We didn't have all the social media you got today.
Let me jump in though. What are you actually sending to the moon?
It's digital. It's digital. Think and Grow Rich.
So you're sending a digital copy of Think and Grow Rich to the moon, like the real moon.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And okay, so now let's talk about your story. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Southwest Virginia. My dad was an underground coal miner. They grew up during the Depression, and he is one of 10 kids. Mom was one of 16. Her mom died when she was 8 years old, and her dad never remarried. Some of the kids were older and helped out. But it's amazing the success they've had with a limited education. But they believed in, they had their faith and hard work, and they may not have had education, but they had wisdom. But I learned to make money as an early age. I was making money before I started school. I'm talking about the first grade, because if we asked for a quarter, we would get I would never ask my dad for a nickel in my life, because he would tell you what you could do to make money. Pick up pop balls, penny a piece. And I remember I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I wanted to join the Boy Scouts. At the time, a uniform was $8. And I remember what my mother told me. I asked my mother, "Oh, no, honey, we can't waste your daddy's money. He crawls around the mines. He wants to get hurt or get killed. We wouldn't have no money." She said, "Why don't you go mow your uncle's yard?" Said, "Don't he give you a quarter every time you mow it?" "Yeah." Bush model. Said, "He ain't got no boys." He had 3 girls. And I did that. I worked that summer. I sold corn out of the garden. I got much more than the $8. But guess what? I didn't want to join the Boy Scouts because that was my money. I earned that money. I not only learned how to make the money, I learned how to take care of it. And I did all kinds of things. I don't mean to boast or anything, but cut Christmas trees. While the other kids is doing doodles or something, I'm doing dollar signs and figuring out how much I can make during Christmas. And always my two older brothers now, we would make more than $100 a piece. I mean, this is as a 12, 13, 14-year-old cutting Christmas trees on government land. Didn't ask nobody. Took a hand saw. We'd saw 3 or 4 of them, 3, 4 foot high hemlocks, tie a rope around them and drag them out, set them up. We was out of school for 2 to 3 weeks. We'd build a fire and a barrel and put those trees out and make cardboard signs, Christmas trees for sale. And we sold them for $1 a piece. They got around a few days before Christmas. We cut them down to 50 cents. But we made money and stuff out of the garden. I had a zoo when I was in high school. I learned to catch rattlesnakes, and I made a lot of money. I think statute of limitations is gone. I hope so, because I asked my dad, "Dad, I've made a lot of money. Do I have to pay income tax?" He said, "Kids don't pay income tax." I believed him. I think he believed it also. So I never followed as a kid. But it was fun to make the money, and to my older brother was a little older. I can remember as distinctly. He got married and wanted to buy a house. I loaned him money for the down payment for his house. Me still going to school. But
Did I read that in your zoo you also had a bear?
oh yeah, I had a black bear, Sammy.
Where did you get a black bear?
I bought it off the Indians down North Carolina, which is a federal offense. I didn't know that. It's a little bitty thing, and as wild as it be, they're the smallest animal at birth, according to how big they get in order of maturity. I mean, it was just it looked like a guinea, about much bigger than a guinea pig, and it was wild. You couldn't hold his in had a little metal cage, the screen on it. I didn't know whether it was a boy or a girl. So somebody said, name it Sammy. So that can be a boy or girl anywhere. So Sammy grew up to be Sammy, but Sammy was a boy bird. And I Dad helped make a cage, a big cage to put him in with chain link fence around it. And I had about 5 monkeys. I had pet skunks, which had been fixed where he'd bite you, but he wouldn't smell you. And I had bobcat, almost halfway tamed. And I built a little souvenir stands. I learned, and I still got a couple of them. I learned you could take an ashtray. I remember it like anything. They cost 25 cents a piece. I bought them by the gross, which was $36, and I sold them for $1 a piece. They cost a quarter, sold them for $1. All you had to do to get the dollar out of them was take a little sticker we bought, said souvenir of Indian Mountain Reptile Garden, US 23 Wise, Virginia. So I paid a quarter and sold them for $1, and I told my daughter, it's your business. Always make 3% on everything you sell. You'll do okay. So making 3%.
So you're growing up in coal country in the Appalachian Mountains, charging admission for folks to see your pet bear, Sammy, that you got from the Indians and your rattlesnakes making money.
Man, I charge a quarter for adults, 10 cents for kids, but I learned things just by natural. Of a summertime, a lot of them old guys worked in the coal business, or they go up north, or people, and they come in. There wasn't a lot to do in Wise. You know what goes on. So I recognized a lot of them guys worked in the mines. They'd say, Don, I brought you a carload of my people come in from Indiana or Ohio. And so I learned to say, well, now you don't have to pay the quarter. You show them around for me and tell them about the snakes and the birds, because I work a souvenir stand. Because I know when they come back out after they get through the minute, they're gonna be buying a whole lot more than a quarter's worth of stuff. And
That's right. Did I did I read that your dad broke his back and refused to take government assistance and figured out how to make his own money?
who?
Your dad?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So grit runs strong too, right?
He told me that the man, I think back then, I was growing up, I think he made about $6 a day in the coal mines. And I remember one time he got hurt and he couldn't pass a physical. He took a job. Now he could draw $15 a week compensation, but he took a job driving a coal truck for $4 a day. And I didn't think about it at the time, but I saw Mother follow him to the truck because he brought the truck home. Follow him to the truck. She's got his dinner in a bucket, and he gets hold of the thing and pulls himself up into the truck. She hands him his lunch and his crutches. I never dawned on me what he did for a bathroom or anything, but the man had a hobby of digging ginseng, which I think is a federal offense today. It's protected. But back then they were getting about $20 for a pound of ginseng. About 20. I think it's $300 or $400 a pound now, I think, if you can find it. But anyway, they sometimes they would each one they dig as much as a pound in a weekend.
What is ginseng?
Ginseng, yeah. And if they dig a pound, they make
what is it? Is it a herb?
It's a herb, yeah.
Okay.
It's real slow growth.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese think it's superstitious. That's where because the roots look like little people. They grow in different formations and so forth. And of course, I didn't dig a lot of ginseng, but there was a herb called mayapple. I wanted to go dig that stuff, and Dad showed me. He fixed me a little hoe, I call it, about 3 foot long, or maybe not that long. And there's a herb that grows around the water, the creek. It's called mayapple. It's some in my backyard and outside my fence, and it's just grows up about a foot high. But it has a root too, but it wasn't valuable back then. It was about 20 cents a pound. So to make any money, you had to dig a lot of May-apples to get, because it dried out and the roots were small. You had to wash it off and then you had to dry it. So I can remember good as anything. I dug that May-apple. I don't know how much I dug. I dug and dug and dug. But I went with Dad to Coburn, his pickup truck. He took his ginseng and he took my May-apple. And we come outside. He gave me three $1 bills. Now I'm 5 years old. It's before I started school. And he said, here's $3 for your May-apple. At $3, I felt as good as I did when we sold a piece of land to Walmart for a couple $1,000,000. I was one tickled boy because I know I made that money. See, I made that money, you know. And even in high school, this was in '55. I see the Corvettes come out in '54, T-Birds in '55. I remember. I didn't have one of them, okay, but some of the kids in school, parents had money had. But you know what I did? I got the snake pit and all. I found an old lady at Coburn. Her husband had died. He had one owner, 36 Ford sedan. She couldn't drive. I bought that thing for $300. I was proud as that if you'd had a Rolls Royce, because that was my car. I bought that car with my money, and even my daughter kids me about it today because it was my dating car, okay? Because it had curtains on all the sideway. It's a four-door sedan. It had curtains on all the doors. So, and the back glass is real steep. You couldn't see in the back. And so if you went to drive-in movie with the girl, if you want to know who was in the car, you had to go around the hood and look back through the windshield. And so that became my dating car.
Very, very nice.
But I was proud of that thing.
So did you read Napoleon Hill's books growing up?
Yeah, I did. In high school, I read everything I could get a hold of. We didn't have we had a Bible and later a TV guide, but we didn't have books. And that's all I discovered when I went to work, going in people's home. And Warren Buffett said, rich people read books, poor people watch television. He's an avid reader. And when I just read the biographies. I guess I dreamed or I visualized. I read Abe Lincoln, anything I get on the shelves. But then I run across Napoleon Hill, and then he was from the area. That just made me even more curious. And so I started not reading all his stuff. And I also read what he read. For example, the first self-help book I think was by Samuel Small in 1859 called Self-Help Psychology. It's a British. I've read it 2 or 3 times. It's in Old English. You don't read as good. But it's basically stories of people that persevered. I see one of them was a guy that watched did the steam engine. One of them was a guy that perfected China. The China would break easily, and he learned to heat it slowly over a long period of time, and it gradually built up the resistance or whatever. And he read him, and Orson Swett Martin could come along later. He read it also. Orson Swett Martin had 2 degrees, I believe Yale Ivy League school. He had a medical degree, a doctor's degree, and he had a law degree. He wrote some 60-some books, Every Man a King, Pushing to the Front, How to Get What You Want. I've read every one of them, read most of them more than once. Hill read him. And there's some ladies he read. There's a lady named Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And a lot of these women that he read, they were involved in the suffrage movement for the women and did real well. And Hill quoted her. She taught how our conscious mind affects our subconscious mind. Of course, what we're talking about is auto-suggestion. If we repeat stuff to it, that's the way we learn. We learn by repeating. Somebody says, Matt, what's 8 times 8? 64. You might not have done that since the 6th grade, but you read it so many times, you said it so many times, most time you recall. We learn our ABCs by repeating them. So the auto-suggestion is extremely important, that we tell ourselves what we want to happen rather than telling it. He'll list a whole bunch of things, 30-some of them, and said, why would someone say, I never have no money at the end of the month? Nobody's hard. Why would we give ourselves negative information like that? They're not going to see me. And whatever. Mr. Stone hired me. I wrote him a letter when I was bank president.
Yeah,
And
let me jump in because I want to build up to that. So after all the reading that you did in high school, you studied. Did you study account? Did you get a bachelor's in accounting
yes,
and then a master's in banking?
yes,
And did you start out as a debt collector?
yeah, $1.15 an hour.
All right. So then after that, you become the CEO at age 41 of Black Diamond Savings Bank. How did that come about?
Well, I was working in Kingsport in the finance office making, I think I was up to about $75. Anyway, I got a call from Jim Brown. You may have heard of Jim. He owns Paramount Manufacturing, most intelligent person I've ever been around. Uh, Jim had a degree in engineering from Virginia Tech, and he got a coal bid and started a bank when he was 29. And he called me. He said that he's opened a bank up, and he said he's short of help. And he said I was recommended. He'd like to interview me. I said, well, I always dreamed of getting in the banking business. He said, when you come over one day this week, and I said, I can come on a weekend. I said, these people been good to me, and I said, I'll get promoted. I said, uh, to treasurer or something. I said, I've got a good future, but I love to get in banking. And he said, well, I admire you for that. So I came over on Saturday, June 1975. I remember it like it's yesterday. It's been a little bit over. It's been 50 years since I did it. And what he said to me was, and he grew up in Grundy. He worked like I did. He fixed flats at the garages and so forth to make money in high school. His dad was a coal miner and he went to Virginia Tech. But anyway, Jim said, Don, you do a little extra one day, it won't matter. He said, if you do extra for a week work, it probably won't matter. But he said, if you'll work harder than all the other people around you, he said, one of these days, I promise you, you'll be the success the world just dreams about. And that's a conversation held 50 years ago. He's a supporter, a mentor. We have lunch together. We talk. I've never sent him someone for a job. He didn't give him a job because I'm not going to send him someone. One of the kids was in my first class as a Turkish student, Alihan from Turkey. And Jim Hardy, and that's, God knows, 30 some odd years. He's still with him. He's a marketing man, whatever. But it was just a natural to me to do it to take it as a challenge, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot even back in treating people, negotiating. I was there 18 years, and the bank was going under. They only had a capital of $35,000 in trying to run a bank, but they were a friend of Mark Warner, Senator John Warner, Warrensburg and Liz Taylor. But they had heavily campaigned for him and give him money. And he said they were closing so many banks throughout the end of the 1990s. They told as long as they kept a positive balance, they wouldn't close the bank. And so I started work. They lost $1.5 million right where I started. I made 90,000 the first year, and then it jumped to 300, 500, 750 or something. Then I got to making more than $1 million. And they knew I could walk on water by then, and was there 18 years. And so I accumulated 92,000. But in the meantime,
Well, let me ask you about that. Like you come in, you become the CEO of this bank that's failing.
yeah,
Just like, what does the typical day look like? How do you actually turn around the bank?
well, start off with I talked to people. I talked to them. I had a consumer finance background. They didn't make consumer loans. They afraid it was too risky. But your consumer loans were up to 20-some%. Your mortgage was fixed. See, that was a problem. So I got in touch with a mortgage company, let them come in. I said, I'd like to sell $5 million worth of loans without recourse. You come in and look at the books, you can check your credit, what have you. I want to raise $5 million. So we raised $5 million. I started making consumer loans, getting 20-some%. And Matt, I was there 18 years. I never made one single house loan that I foreclosed on. Now, don't tell me that nobody ever got behind. Yeah, plenty of them got behind. But what I would do to you, you come in, I'd say, Matt, you and Andy's in trouble. You need to come see me. And then when you come in and sit down, I wouldn't even come in on Saturday, which wasn't open. I said, here's three things going to happen to you. Just do what you've been doing, which is nothing. I'm going to sell your house. The second thing is that I'll give you a little bit of time. If you want to list it, realtor, they might sell it and get a little equity. I sell it, it's only going to get part of my what's owed me and the interest and legal fees. That's it. I said, and the third thing is, I'll work with you if you want to do it. I'll give you some time. You can make a payment. You can pay a payment plus a little bit, and I'll work with you. And I'll sit down and show you. I said, Andy's going to have to quit spending $40 a week on a hairdo, and I'll go through your expenses. And Matt, you can't go down there and spend $100 on the golf course. Y'all can't eat out every night. You got to plan things. Go out on Friday night and celebrate. And I said, take your lunch with you. I said, it all comes down, everything in life comes down to how bad do you want it? And if you do, there's a solution to it. Otherwise, so just throw up your hands and give up. And so it worked well. And I had all kinds of offers to go other places, but I wrote the Napoleon Hill Foundation and told them what I was doing. I'd started a course out here at the college and so forth. They invited me to dinner. See, Matt, sometimes your ship don't come in. Who says you can't swim out where the ship is? But I said, we got a town they got 350 million people in this town. I got the best job in the world. We're in a town with three red lights. I wrote them. They wrote me a letter on my dollar. I went to Chicago and I had dinner at the airport with Mr. Stone. He's a billionaire. Had lunch with him. And as the meeting went along, and he said, I swear, boy, you know more about these books than I do. He said, you ought to be a board member. And I said, what do I have to do, Mr. Stone? And everybody called him Mr. Stone, except Ronald Reagan. If you're in my office, you can see a big picture of him and Ronald Reagan at the White House. And he says, to my friend Clem, Ronald Reagan. But everybody called him Mr. Stone. And I didn't get paid. I attended the board meetings. They sent me monthly reports and so forth. And as it went along, the other guy, he'd been in an accident. He couldn't travel. They said, we got to need somebody to run the foundation. He said, you're the one that knows this material. And so when the guys at the bank, they wanted to sell, I said, do y'all really want to sell? I can get you. So timing is good. And I could see the mortgage bits of the credits getting in trouble, FHA and so forth. And I thought it was a good time. And so we sold the bank and never did look back. It was good for me. And I enjoyed it. But I'm 25th year now doing this.
So then at age 60, you become CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and you created that opportunity for yourself, and you then relocate the foundation from Chicago to Wise. Just on that, the foundation is based at the University of Virginia's College at Wise. I think that was following a name change from Clinch Valley College to UVA Wise. So just tell us the story of the name change, and was Jack involved in that?
Oh, yeah, Jack Kennedy. Jack had brought it up once before, and he spearheaded it. I'm going to give Jack credit. And Jack was on my bank board, and he and myself and there's three attorneys and me, Jack, Bill Sturgill, Don Pippin, and myself.
Sounds like a fun group.
You know what they wanted me for? I had the bank car. Plus, I was on one that had a cell phone then, and we went up and we divided up and seen different delegates and so forth, and sold them on it. And then Don made a good speech in front of the for the legislature, and they proved it. And it was the greatest. Even the prior chancellor, he said he never realized what a change it would make. Because, Matt, you come here to get a degree, and it says Clinch Valley College, and you go up the road to apply for a job. Where'd you go to school, Matt? Clinch Valley College. Don't mean nothing to them. You tell them you went to University of Virginia, it means all the difference in the world. That piece of paper, and it's helped fundraising, it's helped recruiting, and on to have the University of Virginia connected to the college. And they've been good to us. They guidance and architecture and support financially and the whole bit. And we're the only branch of the University of Virginia.
Excellent. So now let's talk about Napoleon Hill. So where did he grow up?
He grew up here. He born on the Powell River, but then they moved to Wise, lived up on Powell River, and then they moved to the town of Wise. And his dad, his mom died when he was 9 years old, and had two boys. Napoleon was nine, and Vivian was eight. He remarried about a year later, and of course, all he knew was coal mining and labor, and he was uneducated, and that's what they expected the boys. He got 14, get a job in the mines, the girls get married, and but he remarried about a year later, and married this lady from Coburn. She was a school teacher. She is a widow of the high school principal and a daughter of a doctor. So education meant a lot to her. So she come into the family and said, we're not going to live like this no more. And she set a path out to do them. She took a liking to Napoleon and challenged him to learn to write. And she got him to sell his gun, get his gun up and get him a typewriter when he was 13 years old. And she told him he'd be known all across the state someday. And she inspired him. And he said the same thing about his stepmother, almost verbatim what Abe Lincoln said. Anything I ever am or aspire to be, I owe to that dear woman, because she made all the difference in the world in his life.
So Napoleon Hill developed a philosophy of individual achievement laid out in Think and Grow Rich, his best-known book. So this has sold over 100 million copies. It's the most read self-help book of all time. And to prepare for our discussion, I sat down and read almost all of it. I got to the last chapter. You see, I'd read this when I was very young, but I'd forgotten how great it is. And so what I want to do is just kind of tell you what I took away from it. So number one, this philosophy of individual achievement is excellent. And as I read it, it's as relevant today as it was when it was written 88 years ago. Two, it's about making money, but the steps in the book are relevant to the attainment of any goal that you choose to set. So I think this is powerful for anyone to read. Three, I wasn't expecting this, but it contained a really powerful defense of capitalism and freedom in America. Four, it told the story of the founding of America in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And five, the other thing that jumps out to me that I didn't realize is Think and Grow Rich is the foundation of all of these other self-help books like The Secret and The Law of Attraction. It seems like they all actually stem back to Think and Grow Rich. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, I published a book of. By the way, when I started, they had 16 books, Napoleon Hill, and today it's, Zane could tell you, it's 140 or something other. Some of them are composed completely. Some of them are his speeches, his articles. He had magazines in 1919, and in March 1919, he wrote a column on the law of attraction in 1919. So it wasn't nothing new. It might just been discovered. But you talked about reading it again. I have got literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of phone calls or meeting people. I read Think and Grow Rich. Why should I read it again? I said, well, maybe you're smarter than I was, because the material's not changed, but we have. We've been exposed to other books. We've been exposed to other conversations. So we interpret what's always been the same, but because of our additional education exposure, we interpret it different than what we did originally. And I mean, if people think, well, it's just Think and Grow Rich, there's a whole lot more to it than that. But he does lay out the steps of it that if you only get the steps of it, which is find out what you want, definite major purpose, what you want. You can't just say, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, make money, whatever. What are you going to do to make money? I mean, people, you don't make money, you earn money. Government
Well,
makes.
let me put this in my own words, because as I read it, I was thinking to myself, like, what is the most important message that I'm taking away from this? And I'll tell you what I took away from it. What I took away from it is that the key message of the book, which is the secret that he refers to, is that all individuals possess the power to turn thoughts into reality. And there's a practical 6-step method for doing this. So number one is fix in your mind the exact amount of money that you desire, or the goal that you desire, and visualize yourself in possession of it. Number two, identify what you intend to give in return for the money or the attainment of this goal, and visualize yourself giving this. Number three, establish a definitive date by which you intend to possess the money or achieve the goal. Number four, create a plan and begin at once. Put the plan in writing. Also remind yourself in writing that a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. Also remind yourself, tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. And mix in with this your strongest positive emotions, including faith. And then what Napoleon Hill says is that your subconscious mind will hand over to you a plan for the attainment of this wealth, or the fulfillment of this goal, and that you need to be alert and on the lookout, because when this plan appears like a flash of inspiration or a hunch, you need to put it into action immediately. He says that you put these 4 steps in writing concisely, you read them aloud twice a day, once upon waking up and once upon going to sleep. I mean, intuitively, it seems to me like when I read this, I'm like, this intuitively, it seems like this will work. In your experience, with all the people that have written to you and contacted you, does this work?
Yeah, it works, but you can look at it like you said was, uh, you got to start. People waiting for things is perfect. He told us over and over again, starting is the main point. Yeah, I mean, if you come in here in the office in India, said, let's go to Florida. You're driving, get out there and you say, and it says Chicago. And he says, man, we better turn around. I don't think this is right. We don't go back home. We change our plan. And that's extremely important. But with start, people wait till everything's perfect. And ain't nothing ever going to be perfect. You're going to have to get some help. You're going to have to get affluence from people, learn from people. You're going to get influence from people, and money. So many things that you need to do. But the main thing is that you have a purpose and you have plans, and they may not be good plans. You can always change them. But the thing is, you start, and what gets 95% of the people or more is lack of persistence. They simply don't have that passion, as you said, that enthusiasm, that emotions connected to it, because it's extremely important. And I've seen so many times that what you step on the chapter on desire, it's on the left side of the page. I've seen it so 1,000 times, and you could pick one out and saying, what do you intend to give? Well, there's a quote from Thomas Jefferson I use. Saddest day in a person's life when they sit down and start figuring out they get something for nothing. There's no such thing as something for nothing. Everything's got a price to it, and you got to determine, I'm gonna be a doctor. I gotta go 4 years to college, I gotta go 5 years. You have to make a decision. Do you want it bad enough you want to do it? But then you got to be willing to pay the price for it. You can't just want it. You got to be willing to then what does it take to get there and be able to do it, and want it bad enough that you get up. Well, I said you could be a success at anything if you go to bed thinking about it. You wake up thinking about it, and in your spare time you think about it and thinking what you can do. I'll tell you, I'm doing a book, and I just got the fact is I got the email from the publisher today. I won't tell you the name of it because it's not copyrighted yet. And I was writing a book, and it involves this material. I swear, I woke up, I looked at the clock. It was 6:24 a.m. and a title come to me. And I thought, I got up out of bed and I said, I ain't going back to sleep. I got up out of the bed. I cut the light on. I got my cell phone and I went on the internet and see if that name was in there, and it wasn't used. And I wrote it down, and it'll and I've got a contract on it for it to be published. But it's not that hard. I mean, like doing a book. I mean, all kinds of people do them. But a book is about 40,000 words or something like that, and you determine that if you do 3,000, 3,500 words somewhere like that a month, 12 months you'll have a book. But you can't go 3 months and then start. It's determined how quick you want to do it, and then break that thing down in parts. And if you miss a day, then that means you got to make up an extra.
This emphasis on start now is something that I've seen a lot of as well. Like in my opinion, a lot of colleges and universities seem like what they teach in business to me seems kind of very theoretical and more geared towards like trying to get you a job than inspiring you to actually start something now. And the comparison for me is when I went through Y Combinator, which is a program in Silicon Valley that helps you launch a startup. A lot of the philosophy of Y Combinator was very much in alignment with the philosophy of Napoleon Hill, which is start now, launch something bad, talk to customers, iterate the plan, learn from customers, iterate, and keep building. It's just a heavy bias towards starting now, towards action. And that seems to be central to Napoleon Hill's philosophy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I said, it's like one of the things. It's not really that hard to do. The flip side is it's not that hard not to do either. And so what does people do? They take the easier way out. And the trouble it is, Matt, is, and I've noticed it even in people that's my age, or as they get older, they're usually bitter. And George Washington Carver, I use a quote in one, I believe it was the last book I did, man credited to invent peanut butter. He said, excuses, that'll take you it's not his exact word, but excuses won't give you nothing but failures. And when you start making excuses, you're on the road to failure. I mean, you can say, my parents didn't send me to right school. Get over it. They probably did the best what they could with it. You take from here and go forward, And but people, they get bitter. They start saying, rich people don't pay enough taxes. Are they stupid? Are they stupid? Do they realize what few percentage of people pays all the taxes?
I'll tell you something. And like this is just my opinion, but like you think back to like Napoleon Hill's day, like especially if you're living in the Appalachian Mountains in the coal mining territory, yeah, they'd pay you in scrip. Like the money they pay you, you'd have to spend on the food that you eat. Like that's hard to get out of. That's hard to lift yourself up from your own bootstraps. I would say that's harder than, moving from the outskirts of California into Silicon Valley. That's easier than getting from a coal mine out of coal mining territory. So it's like I agree philosophically with what you're saying, which is we need to really emphasize that it's on the individual. It's about putting your left foot in front of your right foot instead of putting your hand out for a payout.
Yeah, well, it's not a whole lot different than the slave mentality of being on a plantation or working for a company that way. My dad was a union coal miner, but like you said, they did script. I used to collect this stuff, but their prices in their store, they all knew it was a lot higher than it was somewhere else. But that they had to trade it out. Most of them lived in a company house. If they had water in their house, it's company water. When they got electricity, it's company electricity. They had a company doctor, and their groceries and foods and all. They paid for it with coal company script. And so many, it's a plantation mentality. And we have it today with the government that somebody's going to take care of it. Till we learn how to be self-reliant, and that's so much of material till we become to be self-reliant. We're not going to have good results in life. If you're sitting there watching television and somebody expecting to say, knock on the door and say, Matt, I got a deal for you. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It may be comfortable sitting on that lazy boy or on the church rocker on the porch. It may feel good, but it won't take you nowhere. It won't take you nowhere. And you can keep up one after excuse after excuse after excuse. Won't get you nowhere. You have to take with what you've got. I mean, just think the people in the foreign countries of capitalism. I love what the British lady said was, it's the worst economic system that's ever been invented that works, and it's the only one. When you deprive someone, hope is what drives us. I know that if I get up a little bit extra, I put out a little bit extra. It's not guaranteed, but knowing past history, what I know is if I put the results out, if I do a little more, I'll receive a little bit more. It's planting a seed for it, and it's real good, easy in the banking business when you got people like, and I won't mention their names, is on that big kind of money them guys made, and I can take care of all my people. And what I recommend for raising it. And then they say, how about me? I said, guys, you can call me arrogant. Look at the income statement, the balance sheet. Let your conscience be your guide.
So out of curiosity, do you know if Napoleon Hill was a Christian?
Was he a Christian?
If you know, yeah, I'm asking if you know.
He grew up an old regular Baptist. He emphasized that he wanted his philosophy. I see it was in 1921, I believe he wrote a piece on intolerance. He said he wanted to live the day that when we did not know people as Jews or Gentiles or by their religion or the color of skins, we simply knew everybody as brothers and sisters. And that's the reason he didn't. I know he liked the Mormons. He didn't belong to the Mormon church. He interviewed the Mormon president. And in fact, we got a tape of him talking about it. It's 1935, and the Mormon president told him, said, from this day forward, no Mormon will be on welfare. We take care of our own people. And I have people who deals with me that are Mormons, and they have a better tendency to look after people. But to say he's raised as an old regular Baptist, that's where he attended church. That's where he got his oratory skills from, because them people could talk for 2 hours at a time or 3 hours, whatever, if you ever attended one of them. My mother-in-law and father-in-law belonged to that church.
Okay. So how did the Napoleon Hill Foundation come to be?
Well, before he died in 62, his wife, Annie Lou, their dream was that the philosophy would be put aside and would be perpetuated. I won't name them, but I lost a good friend the other day, Dennis Whaley. I don't know Dennis. He wrote Psychology Winning, a best-selling self-help record I think ever made. He taught. He had a PhD. He taught at UCLA and USC. But anyway, he died last week. But most of those people didn't put anything. And I won't name any of them's names because I've been on stage with them and whatever. You wrote books with them, but not many of them done anything to perpetuate it. So they wanted to set up a nonprofit, and they took the popular arts all and they formed a nonprofit in South Carolina in 1962. And that Mr. Stone contributed to help. He gave them $500,000, which they paid him back as the revenues come in without interest. But that was his desire. And of course, all the rumors, he died broken on. He died in 70. Annie Lou died in 84. I got her will. She had more than $1 million when she died, which she left her relatives and so forth. But all those books are in a nonprofit, and that's the reason we protect our trademarks and our copyrights.
And I'm going to ask you more about the foundation here, but just leading in, does Napoleon Hill have descendants alive today?
The what?
Descendants, people related to him, are they still alive?
Oh yeah. Well, his grandson's on my board. Dr. J.B. Hill, uh, um, Napoleon's sons are dead. He had three. He had he had three sons, but he got grandsons. And I bet I went to David. JB's a doctor. He went to Vanderbilt while he was in service, served 20 some odd years in the Marines. And then when we got out, he went to medical school at the age of 40 something. But uh, anyway, when David, his dad died, they give him full military honors, and the family invited me to Arlington. I went up, and he was really heavy decorated. He was in the Korean War and World War II both. And then I met one of JB's sisters. She was a pharmacist and had four sons. She was married to a doctor, a brain surgeon. She had four sons. Three of them were medical doctors, and one of them was an investment banker. So the kids have turned out real. The kids have all turned out real well. Uh, well, when he got married, he had two sons, Vivian and Napoleon, and then he married that lady that had three kids from Coburg, and then they had a son of their own, Paul. And Paul's an interesting story. I write him in a book that I'm doing. I basically got the manuscript done. It's Paul. Paul was born, and he was Napoleon was 12 by then, but Paul went off to medical school at Georgetown and never was married. I've got his will. He was worth a couple $1 million, but he's really interesting. He's really a bright guy. He was the attending physician when Patton got killed in World War II because he got injured in a Jeep wreck. And Paul was the attending physician, a surgeon. He passed away, but he had an interesting career. But he left all his money. In fact, he left some of it to the church, Baptist Church in Wise, in member of his. It's in the will in memory of his mom and dad.
Yeah, so I've seen all these criticisms of Napoleon Hill. One you've already addressed, which is some people say, he wasn't successful because he died broke, and you said that you've seen the will that showed no, he was actually financially successful. The other criticism I've seen is this claim that he never actually met Andrew Carnegie. Um, I think it's sort of unfair to criticize someone who can't respond to the claim, right? Like, how do you prove that a meeting took place over 100 years ago? But how do you respond to that criticism?
Well, we can all believe what we want. I heard that on Edison. We got pictures of Edison. We got letters from Edison. He is a friend of Barnes. His only thing I've got handwritten letters from Barnes. He nicknamed him Nap the Sap. He said because he worked for Roosevelt for nothing, but they had a good relationship up to the dad. We got letters from Henry Ford, FDR's secretary, thanking him for arranging this meeting at the White House. It was very productive, and said, "I want to hold a dinner." And it's on White House stationery. We got all this stuff, but you got them people out there. It's like, man, I got a book called Your Millionaire Mindset. It's done well. It's got, I like something like that. It's got 120, 130 ratings, and they're all 5, except one. One guy said, "Don't read this book, read that Richest Man in Babylon." So, it's like, it doesn't bother me. I know what I've done. I've helped 1,000 kids go to college, and he's one out of them. Surely, you got 100 people give you a good rating, and one come along, are you some kind of nut or what? It doesn't bother me. But I learned a long time ago, them that can, they do. And them that can't do nothing, they can criticize. So
I like it. And I'll tell you what it feels like to me, right? It feels like to me that criticisms are an effort to prevent people from bettering themselves by reading his principles. And I see a similar thing with the founding fathers. It's almost like people aren't able to criticize the principles because the principles are so strong, so they go and they try to criticize the person. That's what it feels like to me.
well, I've read 4 books by a guy named Walter. I've read thousands of books. I don't even know how many thousands. I read 4 books by a guy named Walter Issa.
Isaacson.
He wrote the book he called The Four Geniuses. One's Ben Franklin. Nobody could question that. One is Einstein. I don't think nobody questioned that. One of them was Leonardo da Vinci. And then the fourth one came about was Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs actually called him and said, "You're doing that book. Don't you think I need to be included?" And he said, "Well, maybe a little later on." And then he found out that Steve Jobs had cancer, had six, and he gets in touch with him and said, "Steve, we need to do that book." He did. But now here's Leonardo da Vinci. I collect art, okay? You fill my house or in my office, I collect art. I've attended auctions. I've sold stuff to Sotheby's and all these other places. It's just a hobby. I loved art. Leonardo da Vinci in the 1490s, I remember most of the dates. He was born illegitimate. His dad was rich, had 8 other kids, never claimed Leonardo. He's self-educated. He painted Mona Lisa, Last Supper, and Madonna and Child, and sculptures. He left notebooks predicting man's. This is in the 1490s. You can look it up in the 1490s. Okay, his dad never accepted him, and when he died, he took care of all the other race, left Leonardo nothing because his mother was their servant. I think he called it a hand servant or something. Anyway, Leonardo was supposedly gay. He is left-handed, and he dressed in women's clothes. Now, what do we want to remember him for? He's got the most famous paintings in the world. Most famous paintings in the world. So do we appreciate his work, or we find out, oh, Leonardo, he liked to dress up in funny clothes? What good does it do you? I appreciate what he left us. Listen, Napoleon went through 2 world wars. He went through the Depression. I got the books. In 1929, when Law of Success was come out, he was averaging $2,500 a month. Look it up. That's $46,000 a day per month. Okay? And he bought a 675 acres, 6 or 700 acres. That's one place I seen 675, 174. Estate 3-story mansion up in the Catskill Mountains with houses and servants and all that stuff. He bought a Rolls Royce and he was rolling in the money. Guess what happened in October of 29? Stock market crashed. He was selling courses and so forth. He had the money rolling in. It said within a couple of years, them $2,500 a month checks was dropping down to less than $100 a month. Things happened, but one thing we can say, he never did quit. He never did quit. And look to people he's influenced. I've been to church, Sunday school with Troy Cassie, founded Chick-fil-A. Teacher gave him that book in 37. He carried that book everywhere he went with the Bible. And I had 3, 4 newspapers called because we'd traveled together and he come up there and spoke to the kids. He's worth $6.5 billion. He started off with a little restaurant at Seaton, called it the Dwarf, is in the suburb of Atlanta, called the Dwarf because it only seat 10 people at a time. And I mean, Steve Harvey says he's read the book 35 times. The list is on and on and on. Mitt Romney, when he was running for president, he's a Mormon. He said their advisor, I think is what they call him, spiritual advisor, gets the boys together and they go on missionary works. He told them all of them to read that book and discussed it. And when he was running for president, I would hear him say stuff and think, "Hey, Mr. Romney, you know where that comes from, don't you?" But
no, that's fantastic. So now let's talk about the foundation. So what's the mission of the Napoleon Hill Foundation?
It's to perpetuate his philosophy and to keep the material out there and to educate, to make the world a better place in which to live is our motto. We have over 500 foreign publishers, over 500. In fact, is JB, my trustee, he's got 2 grown kids. He adopted from Russia. And he called one day, said someone having a conversation, "Can you count how many we got?" And I said, "Zane, how many Russian publishers we got?" We have 42 different publishers in Russia alone.
But let me say this back to you. The Napoleon Hill Foundation owns either a combination of the copyright to original works, and or trademarks. And so publishers all around the world that want to publish these books come to you and say, I'll pay you a royalty if you let me publish the books.
Gosh, we got
Is
we've
that
got
right? Is that right?
huh?
Is that how it works?
Yeah, we get an advance on the books and we give them rights. The foreign stuff I usually give them 5 years. And so we can't go over and audit your books. But we deal with, well, like the Random House, for example. Random House is one of the largest publishers over here, but they're actually owned by Germans, which is Verlag. And I got a reward today, $17,000 from them. But we get royalties, but we get an advance up front. And then we license the audios, the ebooks, downloads. It's basically 25%. We got a book, Success to a Positive Mental Attitude. It was written in 1960 by Mr. Stone at Simon Schuster's. Got it as an ebook. They pay us. I just looked because I had a question. The same. They pay us a little over $4,000 a year in English just for ebook on a book that's now 65 years old. I mean, does that tell you something of it?
So the publisher business model is an advance plus royalties. And then how do you think about royalties like in terms of gross versus net?
I don't do net. I'm a banker. If you deal with business with somebody net, they ain't no net. They can take her girlfriend to France. They can write off anything they want to. I'm
You
on
said to me, you said to me once, net means nothing, and that always stuck with me.
net. The net, you're not going to get nothing. We'll agree on an advance up front and a fixed royalty on gross sales. And
Okay.
and they'll either do that or we won't do it because I come over and audit their books. But I got something on them. If they're making money, like the Outwitting Devils in 68 languages and a lot more countries now, because like Spain, some language covers a whole bunch of countries. It's in 68. I know they're making good money on it. I know where the royalties come in. At the end of that 5 years, they're going to be tickled to death to renew that thing. Fact is, on the good ones, they'll get in touch with us a year or so before it's up and says, hey, well, this is just to let you know we'd like to renew the contract on this book when it expires. So we got some leverage on it.
So then what about when some of the older books go into the public domain? How does that affect it?
Well, that's questionable because they're different in different places. So now the stuff you're doing, you don't have the copyright law now says Sonny Ball there 95 years. So, but if we have a book and say it was to be in it, and they question it, I would say we will let you put on the title authorized by the Napoleon Hill Foundation. You can use our logo, and you know where the money is going, and you can be assured that the material's not being altered or nothing like that. So it's authenticity. If somebody's wanting out there wanting to beat you or whatever, don't have no morals, hey, they can live with it. It's not going to kill us.
Okay, beautiful. And then so there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who think, one day I'd love to publish a book. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I guess if somebody would want to know is, don't tell a story until you've lived it. Don't be out there telling people how to be successful if you don't have no track record. They say out there people how to make millions this, make millions that, and change. And a lot of them in a self-help book, they're making money telling you how to make money, and they ain't ever made no money. So I guess that's legitimacy. If I'm telling something, I got a story to go with it. This is what I done. This is what I done. And I can give marketing stories. I can teach these kids. They like me coming here every day and talk to them. For example, I just common sense. I was down there at the cleaners. We called the cleaners. It was a fantastic business. And that's the piece we got for a couple $1 million at Walmart as I started the foundation and knew I was going to be traveling. But I stopped down. It was over till 7 o'clock. I stopped down coming from the bank, and it's the fall. And my daughter was going to school out there at Kelly. Bunch of little giggly girls, 6 or 8 of them, I guess they had their band uniforms on, one of their band uniforms on. I told them little girls, I said, we're going to clean your uniform first time. We're not going to charge you. You're not going to charge? No, we're not going to charge you. And I knew the band had 125, 130 kids. You tell every one of them kids, the first time they bring your uniform down, we're going to clean it free. And when they left, that woman said, we're going broke, ain't you? I said, you won't never see the day that Don Green's broke. I said, uh, it'll work. She said, what if they don't come back and do business with? I said, that's their problem. It's not my problem. But I'm giving them an opportunity to do. I don't know how much business I got from that, but it worked. It worked. And we never took out a newspaper. We never did a coupon. We charged more than the other people did. We give them a bag that had their name on it. It put on there, hey, Matt likes his shirt slightly starched and so forth. They didn't get that nowhere else. We had a drive-in. Andy didn't have to take the kid out of the seat. They'd go through the drive-in, dump the stuff off, and we cleaned their bag and give it back to them with the clothes. And we did stuff. And I spent $39.95 running from Inc. magazine learning the dry cleaning business, what people like. And you know, I remember another time on Saturday morning, bank didn't open. I was going down through and I stopped, and this lady come in and she said, "We've had a death in a family." Said, "Any way I can get this closed back today?" Of course, she knew what to say because if they dropped it off, they could get it the same. They could get it off the same day. She said, "Yes." I would laugh. She left. I said, "Juanita, when she comes back to pick him clothes up, don't charge her anything." "Well, I don't think she's ever been in here before." I said, "Well, don't you think she's had a death in the family? That's enough. We'll give her a good chance to come back." Stories like that sells a heck of a lot more than coupons do.
Yeah. So that's publishing and licensing with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. What about scholarships and education? And I know this is you're very proud of this. So tell me about what you've achieved with scholarships and education.
My gosh, we give them millions of dollars. I'll have it this week what the balances is. We've got 7 different things, but we got 200 and some kids a year in high school takes a course which we pay for, and we give them a book and pay the professor for his extra work. And then the scholarships, I started off at $500 a month for a year for a few of them. We kept building numbers up, and I tell you, I don't select them or anything because I don't have time. But I think there's about 25, maybe 30 of them, and they're getting somewhere $10,000-15,000 a year apiece.
So let me say that back to you. You've got a course that high school students can take that are funded by donor money that helps educate and inspire students on the principles of success that Napoleon Hill wrote about. And then some of those students go on to study at college and get a scholarship to continue their studies at college.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Out of curiosity, the high school course, is that just like a high school course, or does that also then give them college credit?
They get 3 hours credit at UVA Wise. I can't speak for the other colleges. They get 3 hours credit. And more than that, this course, Keys to Success, it's now a required course of business majors here at the college.
Okay.
So they put a lot of emphasis on it.
And so then what's the business model, I guess, for the foundation here? Is it like, or like, how does it work? Like, is it just generous businesses that like, why do businesses or people fund the scholarships?
Well, I mean, we make the money. For example, a year ago, it was in June, a Japanese come to visit me, and they wanted to license our material, and I had told them about the high school course, and they said, "Can we license that?" I said, "Yeah, but you'd have to translate it. It's all digital. I can furnish the digital. How much would you want?" I said, 200,000 up front, and a minimum royalty of $25,000 a year, and 10% of the amount you take in. And I went over there. They paid me first class. My daughter and I, it's $25,000 a file. And I spoke to 1,600 people. They gave me an award. They hired a guy to do a painting of me, which you would absolutely wouldn't believe it's in my back office. But they interviewed me for the magazine and for the papers, and they interviewed me for their courses. And I'll get royalties. They're using what I've told them. They've been teaching this material for 40 some years. Personal development, they have 240 some employees. I will continue to get royalties. Plus, they're doing our books. I went in a bookstore there and they had Think and Grow Rich, and I actually counted them because there was about 16 in a stack, and I count. They had 250 of one of our books. And like this one right here, they had all kinds of our books in English. It's the world's largest bookseller in Tokyo. And I'll get royalties on off all those books in addition to get royalties off them courses and so forth.
So they're making money selling books. Is that different to businesses in America that might just be donating to help fund scholarships?
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess we don't. We have some individuals donate, but for us, companies up and send us money. It's a that's for a little. That's for a little.
Okay, and that's helpful to understand. So then I noticed that you got connected with Sharon Lechter, and you'd mentioned that you published Outwitting the Devil, and that you've had some amazing guest speakers at Napoleon Hill Day, Greg Reed, Jim Stovall, Lefford Fate, the late Truett Cathy, the late Bill Bartman. And so just kind of share with me, like, how did you get connected to someone like Sharon Lechter, and then how did a book like Outwitting the Devil come about?
Well, she um, had called me once. She had broke up with Rich Dad Poor Dad, and she'd like to do something other with us sometime. And so I was working on a book, 3 Feet from Gold, with Greg, and I started it, taking that story out of R.U. Darby, out of Think and Grow Rich. And I told her, I said, it really needs a writer. I don't have time to do it. If you'd like to take and finish it, we'll work out arrangements on it. And she did. And it became a bestseller right off. And then I had the manuscript out with the devil, and I told her I believe she could edit it and promote it. And she did. And she was good at it. And then we had so many people wanted that unedited version, so we published it in bulk. We published it with hers. It was edited with her annotations, and then we do it the original manuscript. It's out there in both of them.
Now, how can viewers, how can people watching this support the Napoleon Hill Foundation?
Buy our books, you know, buy them as gifts. I mean, our Think and Grow Rich. Just the other day, I sold a guy 1,000 in British Columbia to distribute to his employees. The best investment you'll ever make is what you invest in yourself. The second best investment you'll ever make is that you invest in your family and your employees. And that's plain and simple. You can't make a better investment. I mean, what kid that goes through high school or college wouldn't like to show that Think and Grow Rich laying on their desk when someone walks in?
Yeah.
I've read that, and learn who else has read it and swears by it. And now a lot of people, now we said supporters. Now a lot of people buy our books in bulk. I mean, I've sold as many as 30,000 copies of one book,
Wow.
one for distribution. So we do some bulk sales. We don't sell them from here. We simply collect for them over the credit card or PayPal, and we send an email to the publisher telling where to ship them to. Actually gets the shipping costs and collect them.
Got it. Then we've talked about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, but I wanted to ask you about your books as well. I mean, last I checked, you've completed 8 books, maybe more. I think your first book was published in 2013, Everything I Know About Success I Learned from Napoleon Hill, Essential Lessons for Using the Power of Positive Thinking. So I just wanted to ask, from your perspective, are there some key lessons that we haven't discussed, maybe that you mentioned in that book that you'd like to share with folks?
Well, let's see. Here's this was not the latest. It's not the latest book, but this is close to it. And the reason I wrote this one, it's Napoleon Hill Secret. That's my book, and it's done quite well. It's with Humanix. They own Newsmax magazine, Newsmax cable. I guess I was on there half a dozen times promoting the book, but they give me full-page spreads in Newsmax magazine on 4 different occasions with the 2 books I did with them, and the reason I wrote the book was in Think and Grow Rich, the word action, ACTION from Napoleon Hill. That's his secret. It's in there 77 times. Matt, don't tell me you got a good idea and you're just sitting on it. You got to do something with it, And the word is action, and that's what I try to get across in the book.
Well, let me tell you about the action I'm taking. So I feel called to a project that combines practical entrepreneurship, action-oriented entrepreneurship, teaching young students how to really start their own company, and combining that with what's called well, the the philosophy of individual freedom. So capitalism, the American founding, and a lot of that's captured in this collection of books called the Great Books of Western Civilization, because they're the great authors that inspired the founding fathers. And after I just recently read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, that is absolutely a great book because it includes all of these principles wrapped in a single book. So what I'm doing is creating a course that teaches entrepreneurship and freedom. Um, what would be your advice for me about how best to draw on the lessons of Napoleon Hill to build into this course that I'm creating?
Well, I think we should always be in mind that happy is defined happiness, and happiness is found only one way, and that's by making someone else happy. Now you can talk about everything you want. If I had this or I had that, but I did a fundraising, helped in Malaysia after tsunami. They had lost 250,000 people. I spoke, Interior Department, people from government spoke. They had no looting or nothing, helping each other out. But a psychiatrist there told me he had never treated anyone for depression that was involved in helping other people. Because you can't concentrate on teaching this entrepreneurship, teaching kids how to be successful and be worried at the same time. Our mind's complicated, but it's simple. It only holds one thought. It'll hold negative thoughts or hold positive thoughts. And we tend to produce that. Well, it all originates in our mind. It all starts in the mind. We become what we think about. And that's important. That's important. But because I think I filled the money thing out a long time ago. Was money has two aspects of it. You can have your money, or the money can have you. And when your only goal is to what you can accumulate, then you got problems. Rather than seeing, because it'll come back to you. If we have any religion at all, or any things for mankind, that we do for others will come back to us multiplied. And I firmly believe that. I don't expect nothing from those kids except to see them do well, to put themselves in a position that they can make a difference. You know, the cure for poverty is just one word. One word causes it. It's ignorance. It's ignorance. Anyone that has studied capitalism, has been successful entrepreneurship, they got to love the system. Where else can you have dreams and your hopes? That's what the world. That's what every day you wake up hoping. You got dreams of what you can do. I mean, I helped a Ukrainian couple because I found out they attended church. They come over, and I've never even met them. But the lady said it's the first time she can remember that she didn't hear gun explosions and smell smoke and stuff and that. And her and her husband, and he can't even speak English. And to come over and get a job and get into a little house that didn't have running water, didn't have just a hole, and thank her in heaven, So, they come over and feel like getting down and kissing the ground because they see opportunity. They see opportunity. They're not looking for something. They just want an opportunity. And we got the best system in the world. It'll solve all our problems. That's one of the lessons I taught. And we've grown up, and I've got to go in a minute, but we grow up thinking, if I get some money, I got to get it from me, and I got to figure out some way to get their money. No, what's wrong? We can't sit down and create it. When I told one of the trustees I was going to give people money, he said, Don, the pie ain't but so big. It's just so much to go around. I said, sure, go make a bigger pie. Go make a bigger pie. See, when you walk in the bank with Andy Andy's all dolled up and all. She says, I really need $25,000. What for? And I'm gonna open a beauty shop. I've been fixing these ladies around my house, so and they're always on it. I want to open up a shop. And if I believe what she says is I fill out a little bit of paper, write 25,000, right? Walk out there and tell her. I say, Andy, do you want that in your account or do you want me to check? Well, just put it in my account. We created $25,000 of wealth that never existed before. That never existed before. And there's no limitation to it except up here. Because if she gets doing good in 6 months or so, she goddamn people over at pound, they keep coming up. Why do I ain't got a shop over? Why ain't got a shop over? So I can do it again. I got a girl who will help me out on it. So you keep doing it. And I mean that's how things grow. We don't worry about how to manipulate or how we can so-called con somebody. Why can't we go out and create something that somebody? You only make money by selling. Sell something people either want or something that they need. And if you figure that out, you're pretty well set for life. Just figure out what they want or what they need and give it to them quicker, cheaper, faster, better, or whatever, and market it to them, and you'll do okay.
Beautiful, Don. Well, it's been a pleasure telling your story and the story of Napoleon Hill and the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Thank you for your time.
I'm one that my daughters always tell me, and she says, I need to write a book. Daddy, tell me another story.
All right, you take care.
Okay, thank you. I help you. Let me know.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so I just spoke with Don Green, the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and I have an intuition that when I publish this discussion, that there are going to be people, critics, who come out and attack the legacy of Napoleon Hill. So what I want to do is kind of preemptively address the critics so that they've got no ground to criticize. And I think that if we do this as effectively as I believe we can, that we can actually like permanently set the historical record straight that Napoleon Hill is who he said he was. So to that end, I'm really excited to speak with you, Jason. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be
Now,
on. Thank you for inviting me.
it was really awesome to find you because you've actually done the research on Napoleon Hill. And so the way I'm going to approach this is speaking the truth in love to like, let's find the truth, but let's do it lovingly. So now you wrote the book, The Gospel of Napoleon Hill, Scholar or Scammer.
Correct.
And you wrote that the purpose of this book is to validate Hill's principles of success as sound, and that you wish to endorse his philosophy by debunking the false narrative that he was a fraud.
Right.
And I saw you say that you felt led to write this book. So tell me about that.
Well, so Think and Grow Rich tremendously changed my life. I wasn't really expecting it to. Um, so just long story short, I sell cars. The pandemic happened. I got laid off. I started to explore another industry because I wanted to work from home because of social distancing. So I looked into selling life insurance over the phone. So you just call people who have put in an inquiry for life insurance and, write them up, electronically. So the company that I looked into, once we started training, they had kind of like a module of classes that you go through. But the classes weren't talking about life insurance in the first, introduction. It was talking about how to set goals. And then also the owner of that life insurance company would hold Zoom calls twice a week. So in the Zoom calls, he's talking about, how to set goals and, how to actually achieve what it is that you want to do in life insurance, but also in life. So he's name dropping Jim Rohn, Bob Proctor, Napoleon Hill. So I was really intrigued by that because I thought that it was, a good way to learn about setting goals and being accomplished. So I met with him and asked him, how can I, be more successful? How can I grow? And he encouraged me to read the book Think and Grow Rich. I read it a few times in a row, studied it, scoured it, underlined, highlighted. I really wanted to get the principles down and started to apply them. And, you know, my income before I started selling cars till the income that following year was 8 times more. So, and it was really like a rocket ship that took off. So I was really astounded, some of the things that were happening, seemingly miraculous things financially. So you'll be able to hear some of those things in the book, or read some of those things in the book. And so once I started to see, a narrative online, YouTube channels, articles online about how Hood Hill was a fraud, one, I didn't want to be, as well as it worked for me to be successful, I didn't want to be a part of any, shysters. And then also, I had reached out to some friends of mine and like, hey, you guys should really rethink and grow rich. And one of my friends, my closest friends, was like, hey, I'm a little leery about that because, there's a lot of information online that he was a fraud and that, he wasn't who he said he was. And so, that was the introduction to me trying to actually do some research. So as I began the research, the reason why I say I felt led or called to do it is because the information that seemed almost hidden and impossible to find, it somehow found its way into my access. So I was really astonished at what I found and what I was able to come across.
So just a personal question. When you say you felt led, like, are you a believer and or are you talking about this from the perspective of the way Napoleon Hill would talk about it, which is like the universe calling?
I would say I felt like it was a calling. I did feel like, whether it's a higher being or whatever you want to call it, I felt a purpose to do it. It became more of a curiosity. So uh, the, the, the draw to it became stronger. So
Okay.
at first it started off as more of a curiosity, like, hey, let me find some details so that I can at least know for myself and be able to share with others, like, hey, this is, what the facts are. But as I delved into it, it became more of something greater than myself, telling me that I should do this. So I know that sounds strange,
It
but
doesn't. It doesn't sound strange at all because, and the reason it doesn't sound strange is because I feel called to create and teach um, a a program that combines practical entrepreneurship with the philosophy of freedom in the great books of Western civilization.
Mhm,
And I sat down recently and read Think and Grow Rich, and I was astonished because I didn't realize like Think and Grow Rich is a great book. Think and Grow Rich does combine practical entrepreneurship with a passionate defense of freedom, America, capitalism, as well as amazing stories about the founding of the country.
mhm,
So to me, it was like I'm trying to combine these two different things, right? Practical entrepreneurship with the philosophy of freedom.
mhm.
And then I discovered that Think and Grow Rich had done that 88 years ago
Mhm.
or whatever it was
Right.
published. And so absolutely, I feel called towards this as well. Now, when I look at something that is like a gray area, like hard to know about, I have a certain way of approaching it. And so let me give you an example. Do you remember about a year ago, there were in 2024, there were all of these news reports about drones or unidentified flying objects on the east coast of the United States?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
So I looked at that and I said, when I'm looking at something that is an unknown, which small aspect of it do I know with a high degree of confidence? And here's what I realized immediately. These drones had night lights on. Okay. So, like, what I knew with a high degree of confidence is that they had night lights on. Now, if you don't want to be seen, you don't need to have a night light. And if you don't, if you try not to follow, if you're not following regulations, you don't need a night light. So why do they have night lights? Well, either because they're following regulations or they want to be seen. In either case, they have some kind of affiliation with the government, right? So
Mm,
that to me settled the matter. These were not aliens, right?
mhm.
And then later we found that out. So the way I look at um, the legacy of Napoleon Hill, which, some of these things happened over 100 years ago. Some of these meetings happened over 100 years ago. The way I look at it is, what are the things that we know with a high degree of confidence? So what I'm going to do as we discuss this is I'm going to zoom in on primary sources that we have with a high degree of confidence, because I think, like, you've gone way deeper than that, but I think that's enough to settle the debate. So I want to do that with, well, first I want to talk about the background of the criticisms of Napoleon Hill, but then I want to zoom in on three in particular, which is Andrew Carnegie, who was the richest man in the world, Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors of all time, and President Roosevelt. And so let's start with the background. The main criticism is a claim that there's no evidence Napoleon Hill met many of the famous people that he claimed to meet. So where did this criticism originate?
Um, so the first, instance that I came across was an article online. There's two different websites. One's called Gizmodo or Gizmodo, and the other one is called Paleo Future or Pale O Future, however you want to pronounce it. The author, his website is actually the Paleo Future, and then a outside website, the Gizmodo, featured that article as well too. So it's a very lengthy article. It's very detailed. So, not taking anything away from the amount of research that it took to come across some of these unknown details about Napoleon Hill, but it is very scathing. So it
So,
assumes the worst about the events that he mentions.
so both of those sources you reference are dated December 6, 2016.
Correct.
Were there any earlier versions of this criticism? I mean, you just said there were not. So you're not aware of any earlier versions of this criticism, right?
No, not in modern times.
So I think that is super important. The reason I think that is super important is because Think and Grow Rich was published in 1937. So people had 33 years to raise criticisms like this when Napoleon Hill was alive to respond to them. And to your knowledge, no one did. Instead, this criticism originated 79 years after Think and Grow Rich was published and 46 years after Napoleon Hill died. And so,
mhm,
just to kind of frame this, I think that if there was merit to these criticisms, people probably would have raised them while Napoleon Hill was alive and had the opportunity to respond to them.
mhm,
Um, but they didn't. So I'm sort of entering this with a level of skepticism as to like why weren't these raised when Napoleon Hill had a chance to respond to them, right?
mhm. Right.
Um, it seems kind of easy to rewrite history to me as opposed to like challenging it in the moment. Now, the other point that I think is important up front is that Napoleon Hill lost some of his records and source materials from his interviews in a fire in a Chicago printing plant in the 1920s, which
Hmm.
explains why it's hard to come by some of this source material. So, uh, did you agree with these points?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sweet. So, um, now, sort of the challenge that you've taken on is to look for evidence that Napoleon Hill did, in fact, have meetings with these famous people, some over 100 years ago, after many of these records were destroyed in a fire. So you've taken on quite the research task. Out of curiosity, had you ever done anything like this before?
No, not to this extent.
Cool. All right, so let's start with Andrew Carnegie, who is said to be the richest man in the world. Napoleon Hill said in Think and Grow Rich that his break consisted of my good fortune in meeting and gaining the cooperation of Andrew Carnegie. On that occasion, Andrew Carnegie planted in my mind the idea of organizing the principles of achievement into a philosophy of success. Napoleon Hill also says that it was through Bob Taylor's magazine that he arranged the meeting with Andrew Carnegie. And Bob Taylor was governor of Tennessee, a United States senator, a very connected individual. So let's look at the primary sources that you found that support this. So here's one. So this is Bob. This is primary evidence that Napoleon Hill wrote for Bob Taylor's magazine. So can you speak to what I'm showing in your book right now?
Sure. So Robert Taylor was the senator of Tennessee, as you mentioned. And in 1905, in April of 1905, he started his magazine, Bob Taylor's Magazine. It was just meant to be, articles about the South. And he changed the name to Taylor Trotwood Magazine in January of 1907 because he collaborated with a gentleman whose last name was Trotwood. I believe that Napoleon Hill wrote for the magazine when it was called Bob Taylor's Magazine and also Taylor Trotwood Magazine. But what you're looking at is Bob Taylor's magazine, Taylor Trotwood, and the article called Mobile, Alabama on page 181. And it's written by Oliver Napoleon Hill. So this is the article that he wrote, proving that he wrote for Bob Taylor.
In the November 1908 edition.
Correct.
Great. Okay. So then you already covered this, but you also provided evidence that the Taylor Trotwood magazine is in fact connected to Bob Taylor's magazine. It's the successor to it.
Yes.
So I think it's important to establish that. So now that we've established that Napoleon Hill wrote for Bob Taylor's magazine, you've also established that Bob Taylor is connected to Andrew Carnegie.
Correct.
So I'm now sharing from your book a newspaper article in the Champaign Daily News from March 30, 1909. And can you tell us what it shows?
Yeah. So Andrew Carnegie had founded a organization called the Optimist Club. The purpose of the club was to essentially recruit as many people as possible to hold positive thoughts. And so part of the claims of the critics is that, hey, Andrew Carnegie was a practical, pragmatist. So he didn't believe in having positive thoughts. He didn't believe in manifestation, or he didn't believe in, the law of attraction. This proves otherwise. He had a whole club to where, and why would he want a club to have as many people, having positive thoughts? He was trying to create something in, the atmosphere of, having this club. There were 700,000 members, including President Taft, President Theodore Roosevelt, and Andrew Carnegie was the president. And you'll see in this article, their first annual banquet, which was March 31st, 1909. And they're announcing it the day before that it was going to happen on March 31st. Their keynote speaker is Bob Taylor.
Awesome. And the timelines are consistent. Napoleon Hill said it took him 25 years of research and effort to write Think and Grow Rich. The book was published in 1937, so he must have met Andrew Carnegie on or around like before 1912.
Mm-hmm.
And this establishes a connection in 1909 before Bob Taylor died in 1912 and Andrew Carnegie died in 1919. So the timelines are on point.
Correct.
Another one that stands out to me is another screenshot in your book. So this is an article that Andrew Carnegie published in a daily newspaper called the Bisbee Daily Review in Bisbee, Arizona, titled Recipe for Getting Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And what jumped out to me here is intent. So this shows to me that Andrew Carnegie did in fact have the intent to help people get rich by creating a type of recipe for getting rich. And frankly, I would think that Carnegie has a lot on his plate, right? And yet he's taking the time to try to help people get rich by publishing a recipe for getting rich. which is fully in line with, what Napoleon Hill said. So
Right.
I just thought the intent was an important thing to call out there. How do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it just points back to him having the Optimist Club. He was very interested in passing along wisdom to help people become financially successful. He was very interested in passing along the wisdom of positive thinking and what the power of your mind will result in. And then you'll notice in this article as well, too, the last sentence of the first paragraph, he says, the habit of saving must be cultivated. That is one of the chapters in Law of Success, Napoleon Hill's, not his first book, but his first well-known book. He had other, underground books before, but his really first nationally published book was Law of Success. That is the fourth principle, the habit of saving. So he got that principle indeed from Andrew Carnegie.
I remember reading a phrase very similar to that as well in Think and Grow Rich.
Mhm.
Okay, so now one more here. There's the element of consistency, because Napoleon Hill also mentioned Andrew Carnegie in books he published before Think and Grow Rich. So
Sure.
tell me about this book from 1917 called How to Sell Your Services.
I'm so glad you brought this up. One of the main points that Mr. Novak in the article on the untold story of Napoleon Hill, the greatest scammer, the greatest self-help scammer of all time is the name of the article we were referencing before, is that his main proof of why Napoleon Hill didn't know Andrew Carnegie was that he didn't start to say he knew Andrew Carnegie until after he died in 1919. This book, How to Sell Your Services, came out in 1917 while he was the president of his own college called the George Washington Institute. And this book is all about how to essentially get yourself a job or get yourself a career by developing yourself and then presenting yourself. And what he did was he recruited different people. He recruited John Rockefeller, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, a man named Thomas Marshall, who was the vice president for President Wilson. Another claim that he didn't know President Wilson. This guy was the vice president. And you'll see there in the contents there under the title is that these men wrote contributions to his book, including Andrew Carnegie. So Andrew Carnegie wrote a section of his book. It was a letter on how to sell your services, his input into the book in 1917.
And the what I'm sharing on the screen right now says with valuable advice from Andrew Carnegie. By the way, I can't say Carnegie. I'm just going to keep saying
It's
Carnegie.
Carnegie. Yeah, I have the habit of pronouncing it the American way as well.
Yeah, my bad. But it says it says 1917 while Andrew Carnegie was still alive. So that's a super important point. By the way, is so that's the historical record, but I want to ask you about this book as well. Is this book widely available? Is it lost? Like what's the backstory on how to sell your services?
This book is not widely available. Quite the opposite. It was for sale on a website, I believe, called Abe Books, and they sell rare books all the time for $20,000. My friend, who I'm proud to say is my friend now, Napoleon Hill's grandson, James Hill, actually was, came across it while it was for sale, and he just thought that $20,000 was, a lot to ask. If he had only known that it would be so scarce, I think he would have done the opposite. But somebody else bought it, and we inquired with the company that sold it. And of course, just for privacy reasons, they can't disclose to us who purchased this book. But I do have magazine articles. So there's a magazine from that time called I think it was called Modern Marvels or something along those lines, where that article in that book is advertised in articles there, and also other newspaper articles where this book is advertised, and with the same information. Hey, Andrew Carnegie contributed to this book. Henry Ford did. John Rockefeller. So there's newspaper articles that promote this book.
So if someone out there watching this has a copy of How to Sell Your Services by Napoleon Hill from 1917, what's your ask for them?
Well, I would definitely get a hold of James Hill, his grandson, and then also Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels, because they would be very interested in that information.
Or would you just like them to gift you a copy of the book?
After they paid $20,000 for it, absolutely.
Sweet. Well, hopefully that comes to be.
Yeah.
So also I've seen the first edition of The Law of Success from 1928, which says dedicated to Andrew Carnegie, who suggested the writing of the course.
Hmm.
So let's recap. The criticism that Napoleon Hill never met Andrew Carnegie. Number one, Napoleon Hill published a book saying he got valuable advice from Andrew Carnegie while Carnegie was still alive, and he's been saying this consistently throughout his books. Number two, we have a newspaper article showing the intent of Andrew Carnegie to give people a recipe for getting rich, and his affiliation with a group kind of with similar objectives. And number three, we can connect Napoleon Hill to Bob Taylor and Bob Taylor to Andrew Carnegie. So if I look at this from the perspective of the preponderance of the evidence, it seems to me to be far more likely that Napoleon Hill did in fact meet Andrew Carnegie than that he did not. So,
Absolutely.
last questions on Carnegie. Did you contact the author of the article and kind of share the information that you found?
Which author are you referring to?
The original article that drew this criticism.
Oh yes. I did contact him to no response.
Okay,
So I did send him an email, one just saying, hey, you've done great research. It wasn't in a visceral way. You've done great research. I just wanted to provide information that actually, corrects some of the details you provided. And then also invited him to have a discussion in a public forum.
great. And then that original article that drew this criticism referenced a David Nassau, who's a biographer of Andrew Carnegie.
Mhm.
Did you, out of curiosity, ever bring this information to his attention?
Your mind must be full of psychic energy. Yes, I did email David Nassau. He actually responded. He responded quite aggressively. So he essentially just said, in all of my research of Andrew Carnegie, I never came across one piece of evidence that he knew Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill just made it up. And then he ended the email by saying he was disgusted, that the thought of it disgusted him that this person was making these claims. And so I did send him a digital copy of my book as well too. The same tone. Hey, I know you didn't find any evidence, but the absence of evidence is not the absence of existence. So, um, so I did send him a copy as well. So.
Great, awesome. All right, let's move on to the second criticism, Thomas Edison. So the second criticism is that Napoleon Hill never knew Thomas Edison, the great inventor, other
Hmm.
than posing for a photo of him.
Hmm.
And so let's jump to a section of your book. This is Edward Barnes, a business partner of Thomas Edison, who wrote a letter to Napoleon Hill in 1952 that says, quote, I shall be pleased to tell anyone that I introduced you to Mr. Thomas A. Edison, and I have a picture to show it, and it's signed. Could you speak to this?
Yes. So Edwin Barnes was Napoleon Hill's closest friend. They met in 1913 when Napoleon Hill moved from Lombardport, West Virginia to Chicago, Illinois. When he moved to Chicago, one of the businesses that he had, so he was a teacher at a college and he was an advertising manager as well too at a college. But in 1913, the college that he worked for called LaSalle Extension University. So not only was he an advertising manager for that school, but he also taught a law class. The president of that college and him collaborated to start the Betsy Ross Candy Company. The address for the Betsy Ross Candy Company is on Wabash Avenue in Chicago, and Edwin Barnes's offices for him selling the phonograph for Thomas Edison is on Wabash Avenue. I don't remember the exact addresses, but they're both in the 200s, meaning that they were in the same block. Napoleon Hill tells a story in his magazine, Hill's Golden Rule, which was published in 1919, on how he met Edwin Barnes. which was his offices were close by. I stopped into his office because I needed to know some information. He doesn't say what the information is, but Edwin Barnes went out of his way to not only tell him the information, but also personally drove him to somebody else who had more information. So they started this friendship. What you're looking at in this letter in 1952 is 40 years later. They're still having this friendship, and Edwin Barnes is sending him a personal letter, including, hey, I can attest that you have met Thomas Edison because I introduced you to him. So I think one of the things that are incorrect that cause people to not believe that he met Thomas Edison is that the source is incorrect. People think that it was Andrew Carnegie that introduced him to Thomas Edison, and it wasn't. He's just one of the successful people who he interviewed and talked to about the philosophy of individual achievement, which Andrew Carnegie commissioned him with. So he met Thomas Edison through Edwin Barnes, who was a close and personal friend of his. And
Great.
Edwin Barnes was his business partner.
The next piece of evidence, the next primary source is a newspaper article from 1966. And it says, Dr. Hill was intrigued with Edison, the great and indefatigable inventor. He tells of how during their interview, Edison revealed a diary of failures he kept of various aborted inventions that rose over both of their heads. Edison said to him, quote, I had to succeed because I ran out of things that didn't work. I love that quote. So the key point I want to emphasize here is it mentions their interview. It does in fact mention that they knew each other, at least through an interview. And then lastly, there's the photo of Napoleon Hill with Thomas Edison. And the fact that the photo connects with Edwin Barnes' letter strengthens the likelihood that this was, not just a random photo, but in fact, they did meet and they did interview, correct?
Correct.
Great. All right. I think Thomas Edison's a slam dunk. Do you have any other comments on Thomas Edison?
Yeah, I'll just comment on what Napoleon Hill says about his meeting with Thomas Edison. He goes on to say that Thomas Edison invited him to his laboratory in New Jersey to speak to his staff. And after the speech, Thomas Edison basically explained that he couldn't hear it because he had trouble hearing in one of his ears. It was an accident from when he was a child, which I go into detail in the book as well too, about some of the biographical details of Thomas Edison. But he had an accident when he was a child, so he actually was hard of hearing. And so he tells about, hey, I actually spoke at the laboratory. Edison said he couldn't hear it, so his wife had to tell him the details of it. So that's even more detail. I mean, it's just kind of like either this guy is absolutely insane and just making up the most outlandish stuff because he's got details that, I mean, you would have to be pretty, an evil genius to come up with, just make up details like this. So, or he was actually telling the truth.
That is a really great point. Okay, let's move on to the third and final criticism, that there is no evidence that Napoleon Hill met President Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have here is a letter from April 24th, 1933, from Lewis Howe, secretary to President Roosevelt, which indicates Roosevelt will meet Napoleon Hill at an upcoming conference. I just want to say this is awesome. Where did you find this?
Don Green provided that to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the early stages of my research before Don Green and I knew each other personally, I reached out to Don Green over the telephone. He was quite skeptical at first because I think he didn't know whether or not I was, trying to, criticize Napoleon Hill as well or not. But after some persistence and just letting him know, like, hey, I really just want to further his legacy. He provided me with some documentation. And that was kind of the beginning of me doing further research and finding out more things. But he provided me with this letter.
Well, that's fantastic. And then one more, which is a newspaper article in the Knoxville Journal from April 7th, 1935, which says, during the first months of the Roosevelt administration, he was special advisor to the president. And at the time of publication of this article, Roosevelt was the president. So he's claiming to advise, so the newspaper article asserts that Napoleon Hill advised President Roosevelt And it says this while President Roosevelt was still the president.
Correct.
So I think like the combination of this with an actual letter from the secretary to the president saying he's going to meet you, I,
Mhm.
I think that's as solid as you could get, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's and this is really because I think some of the critics will, suggest, and they have suggested about other letters that the Napoleon Hill Foundation has made public. Oh, that's doctored up. So, okay, so if that letter is doctored up, this is an actual public article that you can get from newspapers.com, 1935, Roosevelt's still the president. So somebody could say, hey, I'm a special advisor to President Trump now, and put that in a well-known article. I bet you somehow that would be debunked, if somebody was just wackadoo and had no connection to the president whatsoever. So he would not have made this claim, which, is another thing that they claim is that he didn't start making these claims until the people passed away. Not only was he still alive, he was still president.
All right, so let's sum up. Critics say there's no evidence that Napoleon Hill met or interviewed many of the famous people that he claimed to meet and interview. With Andrew Carnegie, we've got Napoleon Hill's consistent book publications that mention Andrew Carnegie starting when Andrew Carnegie was still alive. Newspaper as evidence of Andrew Carnegie's intent to support this kind of work. And we can connect Napoleon Hill to Bob Taylor and Bob Taylor to Andrew Carnegie. With Thomas Edison, we've got a signed letter from his business partner confirming he introduced them, a newspaper article, and a photo, which is also referenced in the signed letter. With President Roosevelt, we've got a letter from the secretary to the president saying they're going to meet, and an independent newspaper article. And also, like, just to reiterate, these claims that he didn't meet these people seem to have originated 46 years after Napoleon Hill died. And we know that he lost many of his original records in a fire. So I kind of feel like this criticism is attacking someone who can't respond. And I'm really
Hmm.
grateful that you've taken it upon yourself to respond
Hmm.
and to respond so effectively. And my take on this is like it seems to me that when someone can't attack the philosophy because it's sound, sometimes they go after the person. And I see this a lot with attacks on the founding fathers. And so I appreciate your defense of the person, even though the philosophy stands up for itself. Um, and so thank you. And so Jason Youngblood, where can viewers buy your book?
It's available on Amazon, and eBay as well too. It's on my eBay store as well. So there's two versions of the book. There is a full version of the book that's 700 pages, and then sometimes people like to bite off, a lot of content in small bites. So you can also get it in 4 volumes, volume 1 through 4. All 4 books are about 200 or so pages each, as well too. And I did want to mention one more thing about the fire that you just mentioned, because that is, of course, that's convenient and somewhat unbelievable. Oh, yeah, yeah. All the letters conveniently burned up in a fire. So I did contact the Chicago Public Library about fires that happened during the time frame that Napoleon Hill says it was. And so he says it was while he was living in Cleveland, Ohio. He actually traveled back to Chicago to go visit a man named Samuel Insull, and Samuel Insull worked in the Woodrow Wilson administration. So he was going to visit him, and while he was there, he was going to ship back a lot of his materials back to where he was living. And when he came to the warehouse, where it was, the building was burned down. So there is a building. It was called the Shellen and Rachleigh Printing Company, that is actually half a mile each way between both Napoleon Hill newspapers. So it's a half a mile south of Hill's Golden Rule and a half a mile north of Napoleon Hill's magazine, which were the headquarters. So they're all three right in a row, which within a mile of each other. So now it doesn't explicitly say, hey, he doesn't name the printing plant, but I believe that it was because that's the fire that happened in 1923. So it happened in December 1923. So it meets the time frame, it meets the location and geography, and it actually meets the details of it as well too, because he says it was a printing plant. So.
Awesome. Well, let's just sort of end on a high note. Uh, how do you think, what was it, 88 years ago, Think and Grow Rich was published?
Mhm.
If this if this carries forward with the credibility that it should and is as widely read and studied as it should be, what sort of an impact do you think this can have? Like if more people read Think and Grow Rich, what kind of an impact do you think it would have on the world today?
It's my personal belief that the greatest joy and happiness that you can experience in life is fulfilling your purpose before you die. I believe that we're all here for a purpose. We're all here for a mission, and so you can live that one of two ways. You can just exist, work your job, pay your bills, take care of your family, and then pass away at close to 80 years old. Or you can live with intention and try to actually accomplish things that leave a mark after you pass away and still have impact. So being successful at that's kind of not an easy gig. It's not automatic for you to be able to achieve, what it is that you're here to do or to be successful as well too. So it's not even about money. And he states that several times that even though the title is Think and Grow Rich, it's not about money. It's really Think and Grow Rich is just the title of a book about the philosophy of individual achievement. And that was his message. He wanted to show people how to actually achieve and be successful at what it is they intended or desired to do.
I love that, and I share that view. And let me maybe just end with a quote here, because Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them."
Absolutely.
So a Christian perspective is completely consistent with what you just said. And
Hmm.
when I spoke to Don Green, he said Napoleon Hill was raised in the Baptist tradition in
Hmm.
Wise County, Virginia. So I think
Hmm.
I think all of this is very much aligned. So Jason Youngblood, congratulations on setting the historical record straight, defending the legacy of Napoleon Hill, and it's been awesome talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
This episode of The Matt Sweeny Show is open sourced under the MIT license. You are free to download, use, copy, modify, merge, publish, distribute, sublicense, sell. Yes, you can use it commercially, so long as you include this notice and link to mattsweeneyshow.com. Thank you to my beautiful wife, Tusculum University, listener kids, and our contributors for making this episode possible. Support freedom and more episodes like this by contributing at mattsweeneyshow.com.